Another strange week in American politics. Of course, we are now less than really 25 days, maybe I think close to 20 days, maybe even less than that from the midterm elections. We will talk about that a little bit later in the program. But I will say that everything that we talk about at this point is so implicated by these midterm elections. I've been going around saying, like, I don't know if things are going to get better in the short term if the Democrats take the House. There will, of course, be hearings and some measure of accountability. At the very least, there's an incentive for Democrats, right, to provide some accountability. But I am quite sure that if the Democrats don't at least take the House, things are going to get much worse. And I'm talking across the board. And let's just start with this story that has been sort of unwinding over the course of the week. And that is the gruesome killing of a Washington Post columnist, Jamal Khashoggi. He was a U.S. resident. He was in Turkey with his fiance, seeking paperwork. He's a Saudi national, seeking paperwork from the Saudi embassy in Istanbul to get married. And he went in and never came out. And subsequently, we have learned Turkish officials who apparently have bugged the heck out of their country. People have known that, but apparently have perhaps some ability to record audio, maybe video, in the Saudi embassy, detail the killing and the dismemberment of this Saudi journalist. And this raises a lot of questions. Aside from our support of Saudi Arabia, which is no small thing in their creating a huge human catastrophe in Yemen. This is an example of sort of Trumpism spreading across the globe, like the lack of the U.S. being any type of ballast starts to open up a huge can of worms.
Oh, absolutely. And I even read an article this past week stating from somebody quoted from within the inner circle or some association with the inner circle in Saudi Arabia that one of the reasons why MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, the young prince who is in charge of Saudi Arabia at the moment, and who is, very likely to have been the person who ordered this gruesome killing in Turkey, that he was highly influenced by two things. One, that Vladimir Putin has been getting away with assassinating dissidents and people he considers to have betrayed him in foreign countries, and it just everyone seems to be shrugging over that. No ramifications for anyone. And second, that Donald Trump has been harshly criticizing the media as despicable scum, the worst people in the world, nothing but dishonest. And, it led him to believe that this would not be something that would cause him any serious blowback, and that what it would do is sort of exert his own authority and power, not just within his own kingdom, but also, this is a pretty aggressive move against Turkey in its own way. And, what we're seeing here is a lot of jockeying for power in the Middle East, Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and these various, sort of shifting alliances, and it's all complicated, but particularly complicated by the fact that, Russia is now involved in the Middle East in a way it hasn't been in many years, and you've got Trump, who, is on the one hand advised by a naive princeling, Jared Kushner, and who has very little understanding of the complexities of these relationships or the consequences of, making these sort of moves. And on the other hand, he's got some hardcore right-wing ideologues who are essentially working on behalf of Israel to confront Iran. And so, this is a very, very, very volatile situation. And this has thrown a bomb into the middle of some plans that were, the New York Times reported last week that the Trump administration had been planning to stage a major confrontation with Iran in November over and basically try to isolate them by sabotaging their oil sales.
Yep.
Which, of course, would and this would be with the backing of Saudi Arabia, of course, who would agree to reduce prices or up their their oil production or whatever. That this was a big grand plan that this has somehow disrupted because now Trump is sort of having to, I mean, he's not doing it very well because he's basically saying, hey, stuff happens. What can I say? But this is a very, very volatile situation. And just before I stop here, the one thing I heard that was very interesting to me about how this might affect the midterms is that this has been the most sustained coverage of a foreign policy event since Donald Trump came into office. And I don't know whether that means anything important, but it sure seems like it might, that maybe this is going to have some effect on the midterms.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, but before we get there, I mean, I think you raise a couple of there's sort of two aspects, right, that I think are becoming clear, and this is something that you and I have touched upon every couple of months over the last couple of years, which is what are going to be the implications in the context of foreign policy with an administration that is, on some level, fundamentally incompetent insofar as that they're understaffed, they are inexperienced, they are running our foreign policy in the same way that you would if you were a small, undeveloped nation without a democracy, right? They are running our foreign policy as if we were not a nation, and regardless of one's perspective on how much of a source of good we are in the world, right? I mean, because I think people have a range of perspectives on that. What we were indisputably was a consistent watershed that would change our policies, perhaps at the margins. But fundamentally, there were certain things that didn't even need to be articulated on a regular basis that in some ways impacted and regulated the behavior of other countries. And when we come back, I want to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about that element of it, because there's really two elements to this. There is the sort of the mechanics of foreign policy, and then there's sort of the more broad messages that we send to the rest of the world that are not necessarily tactical or strategic in any way, but they have big implications for the way the rest of the world functions. We're going to take a quick break. I'm Sam Seder. I'm talking to the great Digby. We'll be right back on Ring of Fire Radio.